I took one strand of what is there on that mountain. You won't believe, in 2.5 hours, I was almost 10 to 15 years younger than what I was at that moment.
What if I told you there's a mountain that might not be a mountain at all? A place where time speeds up, instruments stop working, and ancient myths seem to overlap with modern science. A structure so perfectly shaped that some believe it was designed, not formed. And no one, not explorers, not scientists, not even the most experienced climbers, has ever stood on its summit. This is Mount Kailash, and the deeper you look, the more unsettling it becomes. Keep watching as we unveil the strange things happening inside Mount Kailash. You won't believe what they discovered. Mount Kailash. Unlike most mountains, which appear chaotic and scarred by erosion, Kailash feels composed, balanced, and strangely untouched, as if time itself chose to leave it alone. People who see the mountain for the first time often struggle to explain why it feels so different. It doesn't sprawl or crumble like other Himalayan peaks, nor does it show the familiar signs of conquest or decay. There are no flags at its summit, no etched roots of triumph, no stories of human victory carved into its slopes. Instead, it rises in silence, imposing yet calm, as though it was never meant to be claimed. For centuries, it has been described as sacred, forbidden, and untouchable, not because it is the tallest or most dangerous mountain on Earth, but because something about it feels fundamentally wrong to approach. In recent years, that uneasy feeling has only grown stronger. Researchers studying satellite imagery began noticing patterns that didn't behave like normal geology, shapes and alignments that seemed too precise to dismiss as coincidence. Instruments placed near the mountain's base started recording subtle but persistent disturbances, not violent enough to cause alarm, yet consistent enough to raise serious questions. When those readings were compared with global maps, the results were startling. Mount Kailash appeared to align with ancient sacred sites scattered across the planet, including pyramids, stone circles, and lost cities separated by thousands of miles. The deeper scientists and explorers looked, the harder it became to see Kailash as just another mountain formed by chance. Slowly, an unsettling idea began to take shape, one that felt almost dangerous to consider. What if this wasn't simply geology at work? What if Mount Kailash was shaped, designed, or altered with purpose? And if that thought feels impossible, it only prepares you for what comes next. Despite centuries of curiosity, technology, and ambition, Mount Kailash remains untouched. And the reason why isn't just danger. It's something far more disturbing. The mountain that refuses to be climbed. Most mountains challenge the human body, pushing lungs, muscles, and endurance to their limits. Everest tests oxygen, K2 tests nerves, and Annapurna tests survival itself. But Mount Kailash does something different. It doesn't just resist the body, it seems to push back against the mind. From the very beginning, something about this mountain has actively resisted human ascent, not through sheer physical danger, but through a force that climbers struggle to describe. One of the earliest voices to acknowledge this was British mountaineer Hugh Rutledge in 1926. This was a man hardened by experience, someone who had faced brutal climbs and unpredictable terrain without hesitation. Yet after studying Kailash, he reached a conclusion that shocked even his peers. He didn't call it difficult or dangerous. He called it utterly unclimbable. Not because of visible obstacles, but because something about the mountain itself felt unconquerable. Decades passed, technology advanced, and equipment improved. Yet the stories never changed. In 2001, a Spanish expedition was granted rare permission to approach the mountain, raising hopes that history might finally shift. But just before the climb began, everything fell apart. Members of the team reported hallucinations, sudden unexplained illness, and a crushing sense of fear that settled deep in their chests. These were trained mountaineers, people accustomed to extreme conditions, yet something overwhelmed them so completely that they abandoned the mission without ever touching the slopes. Other expeditions came closer and faced outcomes that were even more disturbing. One scientific team was warned by a Tibetan Lama to leave the mountain alone. They listened, stepped back, and returned home. Within a few years, all 4 members were dead. Coincidence, perhaps, but stories like this surround Kailash in alarming numbers, each one reinforcing the belief that the mountain does not tolerate intrusion. Russian climber Sergei Chistyakov described his own experience as deeply unsettling. As he approached the mountain, his body reacted as expected to high altitude, with headaches, fatigue, and difficulty breathing. But what troubled him most wasn't physical pain. It was the overwhelming sensation in his mind. His heart raced without explanation, and a single thought repeated itself relentlessly. He did not belong there. The moment he turned around and began descending, the feeling vanished, replaced by relief and gratitude. He later said it felt as though the mountain itself had rejected him, a word echoed by many climbers who came too close. Taimi breaks down near the peak. Fear and failure alone would be unsettling enough, but Mount Kailash carries stories that go far beyond dread. In 1999, a Russian scientific expedition led by Professor Ernst Muldashev reported something that deeply disturbed even experienced researchers. According to multiple accounts, time near the mountain did not behave the way it should. Siberian mountaineers who ventured close to the peak returned changed in ways that defied logic. Hair that had been dark turned gray in a matter of days. Beards and fingernails appeared to grow at impossible speeds, as if weeks of time had passed in a single night. Faces that had looked healthy before the climb appeared aged, wrinkled, and worn upon descent, as though years had been stripped away in hours. Under normal circumstances, fingernails take weeks to grow noticeably, yet near Kailash, locals claim this happened in half a day. Some climbers appeared decades older by the time they returned. Even more disturbing was what happened afterward. Many of those who experienced the most extreme changes did not live long. Their health declined rapidly, their bodies aged at unnatural speed, and they died young, as though time itself had punished them for getting too close. Then there are the disappearances. For centuries, Tibetan prophecy has warned that no human should ever stand atop Mount Kailash. The warning is simple and absolute. Anyone who reaches the summit and looks upon the faces of the gods will die. Pilgrims walking the sacred Kora path around the mountain have vanished without a trace. There were no bodies, no equipment, no signs of falls or avalanches. They were simply gone, as if the mountain had erased them. Machines seem to share the same fate as humans. Compasses spin wildly near the slopes, refusing to point north. Drones malfunction or crash without explanation. Aircraft are forbidden from flying overhead because navigation instruments fail suddenly and without warning. Storms appear out of nowhere, violent and sudden, as though triggered by proximity itself. The closer one gets, the more reality appears to bend. And that leaves one chilling question hanging in the air. What exactly is Mount Kailash protecting? The lakes that should not exist, side by side. If the mountain itself feels like it resists human presence, then the land surrounding it seems to follow a logic of its own, beginning with the 2 lakes resting quietly at its base. At first glance, they appear ordinary, almost peaceful, as if offering relief after the harsh terrain. But pilgrims and travelers quickly learn that nothing near this mountain behaves the way it should. The first lake is Lake Manasarovar, often called the Invincible Lake. And the moment it comes into view, it feels as though the landscape exhales. There is a stillness to it that doesn't feel accidental, a calm so complete it almost feels enforced. Even when brutal winds tear across the Tibetan plateau, snapping prayer flags and driving dust into the air, the lake barely responds. Its surface remains smooth, reflective, and eerily composed, like polished glass laid carefully into the earth. At an altitude where cold is relentless and most lakes surrender to thick ice for months on end, Manasaravar refuses to submit. Ice may creep along its edges for a short while, but it never takes control, never seals the water beneath. It's as if something below the surface quietly resists the cold, maintaining an internal balance no one can quite explain. Pilgrims often say the lake doesn't just sit there, it listens. Standing at its shore, people describe a strange clarity, as though their thoughts slow down on their own. Meditation feels deeper, prayers feel heavier, and the silence carries weight, not emptiness. Some even claim the water feels subtly warm, not in temperature but in presence, as if the lake holds a living memory of everything that has ever stood beside it. But that calm does not extend far. Just beyond a narrow strip of land lies Lake Rakshastal, and the shift is immediate and unsettling. Where Manasaravar feels balanced and welcoming, Rakshastal feels restless, raw, and agitated. Its waters are salty, dark, and opaque, and even on days when the air is perfectly still, the surface never truly settles. It ripples, twists, and churns as though something beneath it refuses to sleep. There is no visible current strong enough to justify this constant motion, yet the lake behaves as if it's permanently disturbed. People who approach Rakshastal often describe a heaviness in the air that goes beyond altitude. Breathing feels tighter. Thoughts feel heavier. A quiet discomfort settles in, the kind that doesn't announce itself with fear, but lingers like a warning. Birds rarely fly above its waters. Vegetation thins out along its edges. Even seasoned travelers say the lake feels unwelcoming, as though it does not want to be observed for long. What makes this contrast truly baffling is the thin river that binds them together, known as Ganga Chu. According to legend, ancient sages carved this channel so the pure waters of Manasarovar could cleanse Rakshastal and restore harmony. And yet, despite the constant flow of fresh water, Rakshastal never changes. It never softens. Its saltiness remains, stubborn and unmoved, as if rejecting purification itself. For pilgrims, this is no geological accident. They see the two lakes as a living expression of Shiva's dual nature, Manasaravar embodying the tranquil yogi lost in meditation, Rakshastal reflecting the destructive force that dissolves worlds. Creation and destruction sit side by side here, connected but never merging, locked in a tension that feels deliberate and eternal. As daylight fades, the sense of mystery deepens. Those who camp near Manasaravar speak in hushed tones about strange points of light that appear after nightfall, drifting slowly across the lake's surface before vanishing without a trace. These lights don't behave like reflections, nor do they move like stars mirrored in water. They glide with purpose, sometimes hovering just above the surface, sometimes slipping beneath it, leaving observers unsure whether they've witnessed something physical or something imagined. The lake itself seems unwilling to settle on a single identity. Some days it glows deep blue, other days it shifts to green, and at sunset it can take on faint reddish or golden hues, as if lit from within. Scientists suggest minerals, algae, or changing angles of light. But for those standing at the shoreline watching the colors transform in real time, such explanations feel thin. Manasaravar doesn't simply reflect the sky, it reacts to it. the shape that shouldn't be there. As daylight fades and shadows stretch across the southern face of the mountain, light and darkness combine to form something extraordinary. For a brief window of time, observers report seeing the shape of a massive swastika etched across the snow and rock, its arms extending naturally along ridges and slopes. Long before the symbol was twisted into something else by modern history, it represented sacred power, balance, and good fortune in Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism. In ancient Tibetan Bon tradition, the mountain was even known as the 9-story swastika mountain, a name that suddenly feels less symbolic and more literal. But the swastika is not the only shape people claim to see. When satellite images and high-resolution photographs of the southern face are studied closely, some researchers and climbers report something far more unsettling. They say the mountain appears to carry a face, not a vague outline but distinct features shaped by rock and shadow, eyes, a nose, lips, and a broad forehead emerging naturally from the stone. Devotees believe this is the face of Shiva himself, eternally watching over his sacred domain, carved not by human hands but by forces beyond understanding. Even skeptics admit the symmetry of the mountain is difficult to dismiss. It has 4 distinct faces aligned almost perfectly with the cardinal directions: north, south, east, and west. That level of alignment is rare in natural formations shaped purely by tectonic forces. Horizontal layers stack cleanly, forming step-like terraces that resemble massive stairs climbing toward the summit. Snow collects along these lines, enhancing the illusion and giving rise to one of the mountain's most persistent names, the Stairway to Heaven. This visual perfection is what fuels one of the most controversial ideas surrounding the mountain, the pyramid hypothesis. Some researchers, particularly from Russia, argue that what we're looking at is not simply a mountain shaped by erosion, but the largest pyramid ever constructed. They point to its symmetry, its sharp angles, and its resistance to erosion in a region known for violent earthquakes and extreme weather. Compared to other Himalayan peaks that show heavy wear, this structure appears strangely preserved. Supporters of this theory claim the mountain is not alone, but the central structure in a massive complex of smaller pyramidal formations scattered throughout the surrounding region. If their estimates are even partially correct, the main structure would dwarf anything humans have ever built, standing potentially more than 10 times taller than the Great Pyramid of Giza. From this perspective, the mountain stops being a natural wonder and starts looking like something intentional, something engineered on a scale that defies known history. And that idea opens the door to a far more unsettling question. If this structure was designed, then who designed it? Because as the theories grow bolder, some begin to argue that humans may not have been responsible at all. A pyramid, a power source, or something not human. By the time you reach this point in the story, Mount Kailash has already stopped behaving like an ordinary mountain, but for some researchers and theorists, the explanations so far still don't go far enough. If the symmetry is real, if the alignments are precise, and if time, weather, and technology truly break down around it, then perhaps the question isn't why the mountain looks engineered, but what it was engineered for. This is where the pyramid theory takes a dramatic turn. According to Russian researchers like Ernst Muldashev, Kailash may be the central node of a massive global system, a structure far older than recorded civilization. They argue that the mountain sits at the heart of a hidden geometric grid that connects ancient sites across the world, places like the pyramids of Giza, Stonehenge, Machu Picchu, and Easter Island. These locations, separated by oceans and continents, appear to align along precise mathematical distances, as if they were positioned deliberately using Kailash as a reference point. Supporters of this idea point out that Kailash lies at a distance of exactly 6,666 kilometers from the North Pole, and double that from the South Pole, numbers that feel uncomfortably precise to dismiss as coincidence. To them, this suggests ancient builders possessed a deep understanding of Earth's geometry, latitude, and planetary measurement long before modern tools existed. And if that knowledge existed, then the mountain may not have been a temple or monument at all, but a functional structure. Some take this even further, suggesting Kailash may have acted as a kind of ancient power station, a device designed to channel or generate energy using Earth's natural electromagnetic fields. In this view, the strange disturbances recorded near the mountain, the compass failures, the electronic malfunctions, and even the reported time distortions are not mysteries, but side effects. Echoes of a technology that once operated at a scale we can barely imagine. There are even fringe theories claiming this energy may have been catastrophically misused in the distant past. Some researchers point to ancient sites like Mohenjo-Daro, where melted stone and strange skeletal remains have been interpreted by some as evidence of a nuclear-like event. To believers, Kailash could have been part of that lost technological world, a relic left behind after a civilization far more advanced than our own collapsed or vanished. And then comes the most controversial leap of all. What if humans didn't build it? Some argue the precision, scale, and apparent purpose of Kailash exceed anything ancient humans could have achieved. Instead, they suggest it may have been created by a non-human intelligence, either visitors from elsewhere or beings whose existence predates humanity itself. In this view, Kailash is not just a mountain or even a machine, but a remnant of something alien, something left behind when its creators no longer needed it. Ancient Hindu texts describing flying machines known as vimanas are often pulled into this argument. What if those stories weren't metaphors or myths, but memories of advanced craft witnessed by early civilizations? To ancient alien theorists, the glowing lights reported near the mountain, the orbs seen entering and exiting the lakes, and the strange figures glimpsed at night are not spiritual visions, but encounters with something still active. And if that sounds extreme, the legends beneath the mountain push the story even further. The hidden worlds beneath the mountain. If Kailash is a structure rather than a mountain, then what lies inside it becomes the most unsettling question of all. Tibetan, Hindu, and Buddhist traditions all speak of hidden realms connected to this peak, worlds sealed away from ordinary humans and accessible only to the worthy or the awakened. The most famous of these is Shambhala. In Tibetan Buddhist tradition, Shambhala is not a lost city in the conventional sense, but a perfect kingdom existing beyond ordinary time. According to ancient texts like the Kalachakra, Shambhala is home to enlightened beings who preserve sacred knowledge meant to guide humanity during times of great chaos. The entrance to this realm is said to be hidden, not just physically, but spiritually. Those who seek it with the wrong intentions will never find it, no matter how close they stand. Some interpretations suggest Shambhala exists in another dimension entirely, overlapping our own world like a shadow, just out of reach. This would explain why pilgrims describe seeing visions, sensing presences, or feeling as though something lies just beyond perception near Kailash. The mountain, in this view, is not the destination, but the doorway. Alongside Shambhala is the legend of Agartha, an underground civilization said to stretch beneath the Himalayas and beyond, connecting hidden cities across the planet through vast tunnel networks. Agartha is described as technologically advanced, spiritually elevated, and deliberately hidden from the surface world. Some accounts claim its inhabitants are immortal sages. Others suggest they are not fully human at all. To believers, these stories explain why the mountain resists intrusion. Kailash is not meant to be climbed because it is not empty. It is guarded, protected, and actively maintained as a boundary between worlds. This belief also ties into the idea of Kailash as the axis mundi, the cosmic pillar that connects heaven, earth, and the realms below. In Hindu and Buddhist cosmology, this role is often attributed to Mount Meru, the spiritual center of the universe, and many believe Kailash is its physical manifestation on Earth. Geography seems to reinforce this symbolism. 4 major rivers originate from the region around the mountain, flowing outward in different directions as if nourishing the world from a single source. To spiritual traditions, this is no coincidence. It is proof that Kailash stands at the center, feeding life, energy, and balance into the planet itself. Pilgrims who walk near the mountain often describe sensations they cannot explain: vibrations in the ground, an unusual clarity during meditation, or a deep sense of calm mixed with awe. Some believe the region accelerates spiritual growth, as if the mountain amplifies consciousness itself. From this perspective, climbing the summit would not be an achievement, but a violation, an act that could disrupt the balance holding the world together. And perhaps that is why, despite centuries of curiosity, ambition, and technological progress, the peak remains untouched. Not because humans cannot climb it, but because something far older and far greater will not allow it. The stairway between heaven and earth. By now, the question is no longer whether Mount Kailash is strange, but why so many civilizations across time reached the same conclusion about it. Long before satellites, compasses, or scientific instruments existed, people already believed this mountain was more than stone and snow. Across cultures that never shared borders or languages, the same idea appears again and again, that this peak is a bridge between worlds. In Hindu tradition, Mount Kailash is not symbolic. It is literal. It is believed to be the earthly home of Lord Shiva, the god of destruction and renewal, seated in eternal meditation at the summit alongside Parvati, with Ganesha and Kartikeya nearby. From this perspective, the mountain is not a place to conquer, but a divine residence. To climb it would be like stepping onto the throne of a god, an act of profound disrespect rather than bravery. This belief explains why devotion around the mountain takes a different form. Instead of ascent, pilgrims perform the Kora, a ritual circumambulation of the mountain's base. One full circuit is said to erase the sins of an entire lifetime. Completing 108 circuits is believed to free a soul from the cycle of rebirth altogether. The mountain is not meant to be stood upon, but honored from below, like something too sacred to touch. Buddhism echoes this reverence. Known as Kangrin Poche, the precious snow mountain, Kailash is associated with Demchok, a deity representing supreme bliss and enlightenment. Some traditions even describe the mountain as the physical body of the Buddha standing upon the earth. One legendary yogi, Milarepa, is said to have reached the summit not by climbing, but by flying on a beam of sunlight, touching the peak briefly before warning others never to attempt it again. The southern face of the mountain only strengthens these beliefs. Its step-like ridges resemble a massive staircase carved into the rock, enhanced by melting snow that traces clean horizontal lines from base to peak. Hindu epics like the Mahabharata describe this face as a literal stairway to heaven. According to the story, the Pandava brothers attempted to climb it to reach the divine realm. One by one they failed, until only Yudhishthira remained, accompanied by a dog that later revealed itself to be a god in disguise. The message was clear. The mountain allows passage only on its own terms. When the same mountain appears in Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and the ancient Bon religion of Tibet, all as the center of the universe, coincidence becomes harder to argue. Across these traditions, Kailash is described as the axis mundi, the cosmic pillar connecting heaven, earth, and the realms below. It is not just a mountain rising upward, but the point where everything meets, the mystery that refuses to end. Of course, not everyone accepts spiritual explanations, and scientists have spent decades trying to ground Mount Kailash in geology rather than myth. From this perspective, the mountain's sharp shape and symmetry are not evidence of design, but the result of glacial erosion. When ice carves valleys into a mountain from multiple sides over millions of years, what remains can resemble a pyramid. These formations are known as pyramidal peaks, and Kailash is not the only one on Earth. Mount Matterhorn in Switzerland and Alpamayo in Peru are often cited as examples of nature-producing geometry that feels intentional but is entirely accidental. According to geologists, Kailash's steps are simply layers of rock splitting along natural strata, while the swastika shadow and facial features are optical illusions created by light, shadow, and the human brain's tendency to find patterns where none were intended. Medical experts offer similar explanations for the stories of rapid aging and psychological distress. High-altitude environments starve the brain of oxygen, causing confusion, hallucinations, panic, and distorted perception. Exhaustion, dehydration, and fear can dramatically alter how climbers see themselves and others. Someone pale, shaking, and gasping for breath can appear decades older within hours. What feels like time distortion may simply be the body under extreme stress. Historians add another layer, suggesting that stories surrounding Kailash are shaped by cultural memory. Failed climbs become curses. Illness becomes divine punishment. Over generations, these retellings grow darker, sharper, and more dramatic, especially around a place already considered sacred and forbidden. From this angle, Kailash doesn't reject climbers. People reject themselves, influenced by fear, expectation, and survival instinct. Psychologists go even further, pointing to the power of suggestion. When someone approaches a mountain already burdened with legends of death, time distortion, and divine wrath, the mind may do the rest. Anxiety lowers confidence. Fear amplifies physical weakness. Decision fatigue sets in. A sudden storm or whiteout doesn't need supernatural explanation. It only needs a tired brain reaching its limit. On paper, all of this makes sense. Rocks erode, bodies fail, minds break under pressure. And yet, even after hearing every rational explanation, something about Mount Kailash refuses to feel resolved. Because here's the problem with tidy explanations: they don't change the facts that matter most. The summit remains untouched. No confirmed ascent exists, not in ancient times, not in modern ones. The mountain continues to disrupt instruments, unsettle visitors, and inspire the same stories across cultures that never coordinated their beliefs. And even skeptics admit that Kailash feels different in a way that is difficult to quantify. You can explain the geometry, but not why it aligns so perfectly. You can explain the psychology, but not why so many unrelated people report the same sensations. You can explain the legends, but not why this single mountain carries more spiritual weight than any other on Earth. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere between myth and science, in a space we don't yet have the language to describe. Maybe Mount Kailash is a natural formation that became sacred because of how it makes people feel. Or maybe it is something else entirely, a structure, a marker, a boundary, or a reminder that not everything on this planet exists to be conquered, measured, or understood. What remains undeniable is this: Mount Kailash stands untouched, not because humanity lacks the tools to climb it, but because, for reasons both practical and profound, we have chosen not to. Whether out of fear, reverence, or something deeper we can't quite name, the mountain still commands distance. And in a world where almost everything has been mapped, scaled, and claimed, that alone makes it terrifying. If this story made you curious, don't forget to like the video, share it with someone who loves mysteries like this, and subscribe for more deep dives into the world's strangest places.